And this meeting of the Preservation Board is now in order. I'm going to call a roll to establish who is here. Commissioner Allen, are you still here?
Still here? For now.
Commissioner Hammaker, are you here?
I'm here.
Commissioner Hamilton, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Khalil, are you here? Alderman Narayan, are you here?
I'm here.
Commissioner Richardson, are you here? Commissioner Robinson, are you here?
I'm here.
That is 6 present. That constitutes a quorum. Commissioners, take a look at the agenda. If anybody needs to recuse themselves from discussion of any of these items. Everybody okay with the order of the items? This will, any change be our agenda. Commissioners, has anybody read the minutes from June 24th, 2024?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have a motion regarding those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes for the June 24th, 2024 meeting.
I second. I was a full guy, but.
You can second the motion. Is that correct? Okay. Any changes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of June 24th, 2024, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes for June 24th, 2024 are approved. Commissioners, we have 2 appeals today. We'll be following our appeal procedure. We'll ask staff, appellants, and witnesses to affirm that they're telling the truth, and appellants to introduce all the material that they wish to build into the record, and staff. Calling first, folks, do you want to say something about people in waiting rooms and comments?
Well, right now, we only have one person in the Zoom. Mr. Askins, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Awesome. He's the only person in the room right now, so he's gonna be speaking via Zoom.
Nice hair, Bob.
So what's that?
Nice hair, buddy. I like it.
Oh, thanks. It's a wig.
Okay, calling agenda item A.
Okay, first off, Bob Bettis with staff. I'll tell the truth. I need to enter in ordinances 64689 as amended by 64925. That's our nailing ordinance, and then 62382, which is the sewer ordinance, also my PowerPoint and the presentation.
See,
And I also, before I start, I want to note there was a clerical error in the project description that denotes this as 2409 South 10th. Sorry, that was an error. But obviously this is for 1027 Lamine. Okay, so this is the property in question. This is in Soulard. It is at the corner of Lamine and Menard. You originally approved this prelim approval for new construction back in early 2022. This is the property in its current condition, brick veneer front facade, and there's the property location. So to cut to the chase, to make it easier for us, the issue at hand is this. The rear facade was approved by the board with the stipulation that it be clad in a composite hardy type siding. That was agreed upon at the meeting. It was voted on and approved. The applicant wishes to do vinyl siding on the rear facade. On the east facade, that is private, he wants to do vinyl there as well, but that is allowed under the standards. Under the code, the rear facade is both public and semi-public. And so in order to do vinyl siding on that facade, you have to provide a historic model example. We do not have one supplied by the applicant. So, and that is some of the code in that way. So I'll show you, this is the current condition. This is from the street, so you can see the visibility back to the property. It's kind of hard to see right now with the trees being leafed out, but portions do face the street. That's public, but that was agreed to be siding. And then also you can kind of see portions of the door that'd be also clad in siding as well. And these were the approved elevations you saw previously. And this is the rear. So we all kind of clear on the right side what we're looking at. It's just the rear elevation. Here's some context showing the street. So without an appropriate model example, it doesn't qualify the standards to be approved with vinyl. You have a letter from Soulard. They support staff in terms of upholding denial. We recommend denial, obviously. The applicant has submitted a few pictures as examples. I'm gonna go through those, Orlando, for you, if that's okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm gonna go through your
Yes,
slides for you.
please.
I'm gonna indicate what they are.
Thank
Um,
you.
Orlando sent 4 slides for various properties that he believes are similar. Now, they're not historic examples. They don't actually meet the definition of the ordinance. These are newer constructions. They don't meet the definition of historic example. There's a property on 10th Street. The siding on the side is a private facade, so it doesn't fully qualify for this, but that does show a line of sight, but that is private. This is a property approved back in 2018 on 10th Street. The one rear facade is actually vinyl. The rest is brick. I can't speak to why that was approved, but there was a lot more brick approved on this one. Anything that faces the street is brick. It's a property, 11th Street. This is like from like 96. It's a long time ago, so I really can't speak to why it's vinyl. It predates a lot of the use of that composite siding. That could be one reason why it was approved. And this is up from the late 80s, and it predates the code. So that being said, staff recommends that the board uphold the director's denial to install vinyl siding on the rear facade of the building. Any questions for me?
About the west side of the building,
The west side is private, so it doesn't need to have a variance. It's compliant.
so
I guess, so there's no historic references, but then there's 4 or 5 pictures with them.
Well, that's newer construction that he is choosing to use as examples for other sited properties.
And in order
this
to
is
qualify
this
as-
new construction?
I'm sorry.
Is this new construction?
Yeah, you approved this one back in 2022.
In order to qualify as a historic model example, according to the code, it has to be built before a certain time period.
Correct. An actual historic building. It can't be a new
You're
build.
saying that the photos the applicant provided are
They're new
not
buildings.
technically historic model examples. that
Correct.
can be used as that precedent.
I guess I'm confused, because why are they, so if those are, if this is new construction.
Hmm.
And the photos are newer construction. And that's allowed, I guess I'm confused, maybe.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, we're so like, first of all, like this picture here, this one, that's private facade. So that doesn't matter. The property on 10th Street, I can't speak to why that back part was approved. I will say on this one, though, that a lot more brick is being used on this one. It's set further back off the street. Anything that faces the street directly is brick. So in terms of Mr. Askin's project, he does have portions that face the street. Those, it's obviously going to be all clad in siding. I cannot speak to the rear portion as to why that's fine. The plans were approved as such, and the board approved of that. And then you have 2 much older projects. We don't even have records of these anymore. This one's from 96. We have no record of the actual hearing in terms of what was approved, what was presented. So we don't even have the hard copies anymore of these. So to ask about this one and this one in particular, I can't speak on and what members of the board at that time approved it and why.
I guess I'm torn between neighborhood. And then why are there like 5 other buildings that are new construction that we're okay with this? Do you know what I mean? So I don't.
Well, I think, at the time, it's people of the time. I mean, who was in the board at that time? What were the arguments made? Did the neighborhood support this at the time? I can't speak to those individual instances on this case.
In our decision today, we're only looking at the east and rear elevation.
Yeah, only real elevation only. Yeah, and again, the motion was clear it must be with composite siding. When it was approved back in 2022.
further questions, commissioners?
Sorry. Well,
So,
no, I won't.
so we have approved the one, that I'm looking at now, 2201 South 10th Street. 2010,
18.
2008, 18. So. Wow, okay. As far as standards, when were they last updated?
Oh, 708. It's been some time. It was well before that. Well before that. And I should know, I mean, you apply for the permit with composite siding, so the change is coming after.
Why are the change, why the request of change?
He'll let you know. Mr. Askins is in the room. Yeah, he'll be here to tell you his request.
Which seems unlikely,
Hmm?
which seems unlikely.
What?
Be ahead of yourself.
Right? I mean, Commissioner, hello.
And. So what's the, what's,
It's the public facade, that's the problem, right?
On the rear
Which is
The rear is
considered a
term-
public facade.
and semi-public. If it's on the rear, a corner rear property.
Right.
If it was just the back and just the back face the alley, that is semi-public. But anything that faces the street literally is a public facade. So the variance, the request for the exception is for both of those items because per the code, those require the historic model example for the use of vinyl siding.
I see, so we're saying that this bump out here, there's a small portion that actually faces the street.
And I will note that the property is set forward to the adjacent property to the north. So it's also a setback issue where much of that rear facade sits in front of the property to the north as well. So it's, the line of sight to it, it's much greater than usual.
You can see more of it because of the way it's.
If you look at this map, you see the property up here. This is set back on the street line. So yeah, so technically, yeah, so this back here,
Yeah, a lot.
correct.
That house,
Right.
got it.
Okay.
Commissioners, are we ready for the appellant?
Yes.
Okay,
Hello, am I able to speak or I couldn't hear? I'm having trouble hearing a little bit.
You're up.
is that you in shadow there?
Yeah, I can see you.
This
I'm
is,
sorry. I don't know how to make it brighter.
this is like the worst TV news show.
I'm sorry. I've tried everything behind me and it's not. Well, you know what? Let me try one last thing.
You're sitting in front of the window, so that's,
Does that help?
computer against the window.
Yeah, does that help?
No,
It doesn't, you go ahead, Orlando.
okay, tell us your name, please, for the record.
My apologies. I'm not that handsome anyway, so.
Tell us your name for the record.
Orlando Askins?
Is your testimony going to be the truth, Mr. Askins?
Yes.
Okay, what do you want us to do? And what information did you bring us to the record?
Well, I wanted to just kind of point out a few things. The real issue that we're having, which I started to communicate with Andrea early in January, is we didn't have a problem with the plans being approved, but we're having a supply issue. We cannot locate, and I've reached out to her back in January, tried again throughout March, and then finally came to her, I want to say in May, and we just can't find the material. We checked with about 5 different vendors, 3 of which told us that it's been discontinued. So the only option we had at that point was to try and use a different approved material. And when I talked to a member of the Soulard board, they told me that, you know, vinyl is an option. Maybe they weren't familiar with all the other details that perhaps Bob has mentioned, but they did tell me that was an option. They also let me know that we can do it on the other side, which isn't a problem. The issue really comes down to we couldn't get a model example for me to send to Andrea because vinyl wasn't an approved replacement for new construction until the 50s. So there's no model examples of anything dating back prior to 1920. So that requirement is somewhat impossible, which is why I believe they've allowed vinyl to be substitute material. So all we want to do basically is just use a different material that has already been approved by Soulard standards. They want us to have it also red, so we've been able to locate the red 4-inch lap siding at every big box store, from Home Depot to Menards to Lowe's, so it's readily available. We've been trying to get this stuff since we started getting the brick, and it's just been impossible to find, which is why I initially came to Andrea and just said, hey, we just want to make a material change, not a design change. So we're not looking to change anything design-wise. I tried to apply or supply her with an example of the red vinyl, which was the first slide. Understanding that was a different view, but I also supplied her with the other 4 or 5 pictures of new construction in the neighborhood within 3 or 4 blocks of the property, within 2 or 3 blocks of the property that are rear facing as well. Just to give her an idea of, look, this is already in the neighborhood. It's not going to be something that's going to be different. Oh, in addition to that, it's also an approved material. She suggested possibly painting. I talked to someone in the area. They said they're concerned about deferred maintenance with that, which I am as well as color matching. I think the best solution is to go with a material that is also deemed approved by Soulard, which is the siding. And we can get it in red, and it's readily available, and we can get this process and project moving back up and moving.
Questions, commissioners?
Yeah, so I have a question. This is Tiffany Hamilton. So you said, I'm confused, because there's a letter from Soulard group that says they don't want you to do that. But then you said you spoke to somebody that said, is that true? You spoke to someone that said you could use red vinyl siding?
It was an interesting conversation. It was I literally forgot that vinyl was even an option, and they had mentioned that vinyl was an option. They also stated that they were concerned that if we didn't have it and we tried to use a different color matching the brick and trying to paint it with deferred maintenance would be an issue. So that was just basically an off the record conversation. That's how I was brought to my attention, though. Thankful for that conversation, that vinyl was an accepted material. So that's when I went and looked into the bylaws and saw that it is 4-inch vinyl is accepted. So it just boils down to what material, for me at least, is available and what's not. So that's been the problem. Trying to find red siding has been impossible.
I have a question, which is, when you talk about painting siding, are you talking about painting what type of siding, vinyl or the cementitious composite board?
Yeah, no, sir. No, the vinyl is red. We can get that in red right now. The question was potentially saying, would you consider painting siding, the fiber board, and it's just not. It doesn't look good. It looks like, excuse my adjective, crap. And then the concern is deferred maintenance of the fading, the cracking, and so forth and so on. That's going to accompany that material if it's painted.
So when this board approved the composite siding in June of 2022, and that was our decision, and we had rejected with the staff input the vinyl plan, was your plan then to get pre-colored siding or to paint it?
No, it was the goal was, I mean, again, I didn't object to it. The goal was just to get red. And it's like, okay, fine, we'll do red. And then we've gone through the process of, I'd say we're probably in month 7, because once we got it framed up and ready to start ordering the materials, that became an issue for us. So it really just came down to a supply issue, not we don't like this issue, because we agreed to it. But once we realized we're not going to be able to find it, we checked everywhere in the Midwest, with every big box from Cardinal Material. She emailed me and said, no, we can't get it for you. Home Depot, Lowe's, as well as Menards. So again, this just boils down to just is a supply. So my solution was, once I spoke with them, that vinyl could be a secondary material. And that's pretty much where we are. I didn't know we would have to come back in front of the board because vinyl is an accepted choice, but here we are.
Staff, can I ask, have you seen documentation that this material is not available?
Yeah, so I'm
Supply?
gonna clarify a few things.
Because that would be a citywide crisis.
Right, so yeah, so
In red, in red.
let me say a few things.
Down to vinyl?
You said, it.
Let me say a few things. You know, LP siding, hardy siding is meant to be a paintable product, period. That's how it's marketed, and it is a paintable product. That's why it's so versatile. I appreciate Mr. Askins not wanting to have a maintenance problem for a buyer later on. I appreciate that. However, it is paintable. That's the beauty of that kind of a siding. And if there is some kind of a supplier issue with the red, fine, but you can paint it red. They come primed and can be painted. That is the whole point of a cementitious type siding like that product. So I appreciate he doesn't want a maintenance thing, but it's meant to be painted.
Well, yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah,
when we
exactly.
approved this in 2022, that we're approving a paintable hardy
Yeah.
plank type.
So I appreciate there is some kind of a supply chain issue. If that's the image you want to show, fine, but I think then you need to present that to the board with documentation because I have not, we review things all the time and we have not heard anything about a supplier shortage for
Well, yeah,
that kind
again,
of
that would
siding.
affect many of our local districts.
Right,
And
so again, I'm not saying what he's saying is
locally, my
untrue.
brand here would affect every other district. Everyone could claim the same issue.
Right, so it's distressing.
I'd be happy to forward you the email that I have from Cardinal Building Supply. Also, again, I want to be clear. It's not an issue with finding cement fiber. It's an issue with finding the red fiber that's going to match the brick. They have tons of gray. They have a neutral color as well. But if we're sitting here, if we're discussing finding red cement fiberboard, that's the issue. So
He's saying
again,
it's just
Free color.
fine, but then you could also paint
But
it.
you-
correct me if I'm wrong, I'm saying from a real, I'm sorry, I always come from the real estate, everybody, I don't know. I'm asking you, the applicant, I'm asking the applicant, so the difference between the pre-painted is it's more maintainable and it doesn't start chipping and peeling, whereas if you get something that you have to start painting, it's a maintenance issue, it can start to look bad and it's harder on the owner. Am I correct?
without question.
Yeah.
So I believe for me, at least.
Like when I go to sell properties, I hate painted anything because on exterior, because it's gonna be a problem when you go to resell. So,
I think that for me, when I saw the other red ones in the area, they were beautiful. And for me, considering it's an approved material, I didn't think it would be an issue. I thought it would be either or, so to speak. But, and again, we didn't have an issue problem with that. But once it became an issue of supply and locating it, then this was the most viable next option. I think going through the process of, again, painting it, if the vinyl looked really cheesy, then I would understand it, but it doesn't. It looks amazing, it looks beautiful, it flows, and it's an approved product. So that's why I'm here before the board to see if we could just take a different step or a second step or.
You know, Mr. Askins, there is a product that is very low maintenance, readily available, and doesn't need painting. It's called brick. Have you thought about that?
So it's called what?
Brick.
Have you thought about using brick?
No, I have not thought about using brick. That, because brick, for one, from a financial standpoint, I think that we submitted this property, taking into consideration of having a budget, and brick was not a part of that. So, and given that the other materials are acceptable, we chose not to use that.
Anything else, commissioners? Mr. Askins, anything else for the record?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Who's in the waiting room?
Anybody else? Okay, if you're in the waiting room and want to speak, please let us know by sending a message to the send request to speak here. I like to just kind of point something out really quick, and forgive me if I'm off base, but when you look at the requirements for the model example, I think what this is referenced to is finding a historic building that's a frame building, historic frame building. Instead of using actual wood, you can perhaps use vinyl as a substitute material for the wood. I think that's what's getting at the crux of what the argument is in the ordinance. Not just the material flat out. I think it's find a historic frame building that has wood siding. Am I reading that correctly, you think, Jane? And versus saying it's just a material that you can use, period. I think that's probably a better way to interpret how they're being laid out in the code here. So I don't think it's just an either or. You can use vinyl or siding. Doesn't make, you know what I'm saying? That makes more sense.
I'm Andrea Gaines, will tell the truth. I think the issue is that, I mean, there are some historic buildings that have been changed, like that have inset rear porches that have been enclosed with historically with frame. So in some cases where there's semi-public, that might be it, why they were approved. I can't say for sure because we don't have the records anymore, but if it's semi-public or a public facade, it does require the model example for it.
That's more for the overall design versus just the material. I think that's what we need to be clear. It's not an either or thing, as Mr. Estes was saying.
You want to remind me what the neighborhood association wanted us to do?
They support the director's denial of the application.
And 8 Port Alder,
I have not heard anything from the all person.
is this the letter?
Yes.
And did you enter it into the record?
No, because it was sent to you before, but we can enter record officially if you like. And enter in the record, the letter from the SRG neighborhood group.
Will be so marked. Okay, that concludes testimony in this appeal. Commissioner Allen, have you got a motion?
Yes, I move that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial for the material change as it does not comply with the sewer ordinance with historic district standards.
Chair seconds. Discussion?
Well, I feel like we made this decision less than 2 years ago and we had all the same facts on the table. And I think it would be a terrible precedent for this board to reverse itself when the applicant can find the material that we approved and our approval was not contingent on pre-painted. So it's widely understood that hardy board is a paintable product. And that's the common usage. I also, again, am very worried with the loophole this creates across other districts for the reason you can't find pre-coated hardy board, which I've never heard of as an architectural historian working on these projects. Would be a precedent that could blow open the protections and these standards. And, I say that is not always the most conservative. Some of the local district stewards probably don't like the way I go on some of these issues, but that's what I see here.
I think I'm opposite. If we approve the composite, knowing that it was red, but now it's not there anymore. I guess I just internally have a really hard time with painted exterior, because I know how bad that can get and how it can turn out bad in the long run versus a red vinyl. And we have 4 or 5 pictures that show this, even though the explanations are, well, we just don't have the history for it as the explanation. That doesn't make sense to me. And those are new construction and the rules were back in 2007. So I guess that's where my hang up is, so.
It doesn't bother you for us to reverse ourselves.
Well, I thought that the ruling was, I don't consider it reversing. I thought that ruling was made based on red composite, and now that's 2 years ago. And then when you go to develop, and maybe again, I come from dealing with investor development, and I know a lot of stuff. Sometimes they're available, sometimes they're not. Sometimes to the fact that we approved based on a red composite that was available at the time, that was okay, and now that's not. Now we're talking about painted, and I just know the way people don't keep up stuff. This could potentially look really bad, even though we're thinking we're doing good. It's hard to keep up a painted exterior in the long run. So that's what I'm thinking. If we have 4 or 5 examples in the neighborhood already, and this is the second best choice, I think personally, after showing hundreds of houses every year, that is a lot better option than something that's painted. So that's just, right?
I agree, this is slippery slope. I had to wait 3 years to get my wood window restored by the only wood window restoration company that works here in town. And so I think sometimes like it sucks that I had to wait a really long time but I don't think I should have gotten an exception because I had to wait a long time to get in.
I think we gave other
I put
people.
one in front of my building, Catherine, 10-year wait.
There's been other exceptions clearly, because the neighborhood shows that other people put vinyl, so there's clearly been other exceptions. And when you're talking about, again, money, what you can't, as a developer, wait 4 or 5 years. You just can't, otherwise you'd be bankrupt. But again, I come from a different perspective.
But the product we approved is available according to the applicant's own test.
And it was not, and also the motion was not contingent upon it being a red colored finish material. It was on cementitious side.
Oh, well, excuse me, Bob, you're saying
Is
that
it?
you're saying that we don't have to use a red, cement
What
fiber?
I'm saying was the motion that was made, all I'm saying is the motion that was made was not, it must be a red cementitious siding. That's all I'm saying.
Standards don't govern color of siding, right?
Yeah, because they have gray. I mean, they have gray, they have a, different color, they just don't have red. And
So
So-
it has to be,
No,
Based on.
Well,
that's it.
But
So if it's
oftentimes, we
red.
prefer a dark color.
but is
In
it
general.
preferred or is it required? Because then if you can go out and find a dark gray, then that's all the whole thing.
It's potentially an option. We can look at colors if he supplies it to us. If you keep it, we can
That's
look at that on an individual basis when he applies for the, or, color.
I think the other issue is that part of the space is a street, which none of those other buildings did. So the reason we wanted it red is because we want it to blend in, so it's not obvious that it's not brick, because normally we require them to have brick on those sides.
Look at this meeting expanding into the available time.
I know, this was our shortest agenda we've ever had. Here we are.
Yeah, so I'm torn. I guess because the code says that we can use vinyl. For me, it's like, well, okay, vinyl is an option. That being said, we approved party previously. So I'll be honest with you, Ms. Hamilton. The house that we will be listing for me will have.
Oh, God, I hate that.
Painted, party, it will be painted. You just cannot get it.
Well, that's,
This is like a side note.
that's a commission
Just
to
gonna
turn
just
down.
turn it down.
You can't get
I
pre-painted. I mean, it's really difficult today to get that product,
Already.
pre-painted from the factory. It's since.
But if
since COVID.
you say you can use vinyl versus
Well,
that,
that's,
what would
that's,
you use?
that's. Well,
Yeah,
that's the prices.
Right.
Cause I can't use,
or what, she's talking about Webster, let's stick to the city.
but the reality is.
Okay.
Yeah, we're out of our jurisdiction now.
Slow.
Yeah, so I am torn.
Commissioners,
Can we not, can we not get a darker composite board,
Yeah, I
so
guess,
that it's not this nasty party board that's gonna end up a eyesore 5 years down the road versus, and then it's not vinyl?
well, I
And then it goes within
But
what
if
the
we,
motion was?
if my motion were to prevail, the staff could work out the color detail with the applicant, right?
Absolutely.
May I ask a question to Bob or to the CCR? Is there, I'm just curious because I've done a lot of these and been around a lot. I mean, is there a distinctive difference in terms of to the naked eye of how the 4-inch lap looks in comparison to the cement fiber? Because until you walk up on it and tap it or touch it, they look very, very similar. And most parties are going to be driving by. It's not going to be something, because the initial one that I showed you that was red, I thought it was cement fiber until I walked up on it and tapped it and touched it. So
Bob,
I'm not
Well, I
really
think-
sure I'm not really sure why they're so determined that that's not acceptable when it, to the naked eye, it actually looks the same.
Bob,
Yes,
what I'd like to do is, depending on how this motion goes, that discussion should take place as you work through details.
understood.
Commissioners, there's a motion on the floor that's been made and seconded. I'm going to call a roll. Commissioner Allen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamaker, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Alderman Narayan, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
It doesn't matter. Just a buzzer. No, something.
I know.
Big finger, big finger.
Saying,
Okay, and three. Chair also abstains. There's 3 yeses, 1 no, 2 abstention, and the appeal is denied.
So is there no further conversation that I need to have with Bob, or is just, that's it?
Give us a call tomorrow, Orlando. We'll talk through the next steps, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Agenda item B, please. Is the appellant present?
Yeah, before I begin, the applicant is not present. So I don't know how you wish to proceed, and want to wait, but, you know, there's no representation here, and we did have some additional questions for, I guess, the applicant, clarify a few points that, you know, we could discuss it right now, but there's nobody here to talk about it.
What does the alder say?
I haven't heard from the old person.
And what does Lafayette Square Local Historic District say?
Lafayette Square stated they would support the project, but this morning, we wanted to clarify with them our concerns regarding the project, which I do not believe was conveyed enough to them fully by the applicant. So I'm not saying that their stance doesn't stand, but this morning they said they were willing to support the request for a variance.
Commissioners, do you want to hear this?
No,
No.
we need the applicant.
We need the applicant.
Why aren't they here?
I saw correspondence with the applicant as late as over the weekend, so they were aware of it. I will note that they apparently did not attend the Lafayette Square meeting when they discussed the project, so.
So the status is that their permit will live in limbo until they manage to get to a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you can defer if you like.
Yeah.
I
Make
move
sure.
that we defer.
I second.
All those in favor of deferring this until the appellant can tell us that they're going to be here, signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I always forget about that.
it's not very nice. Is there an acting director's report?
There's not an acting director's.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Jen, I didn't know. I thought there was no director. Sorry.
The staff treats me too.
All at once.
I could report that we are working with the consultant on the rewrite of the standards. We're having a meeting with them next week to kind of begin mapping out plans. So that is progressing in its early stages.
I noticed that the planning director is present. Sure.
There he is.
So I have a few questions as I walk out. Has Bob distributed the cookies and the little fun things to have?
I
in
didn't
lieu-
know.
We saw cookies.
I didn't
Okay,
see.
good.
Very well.
Oh.
That's for you.
Oh,
So, thank you all. Jan has been doing exactly what you said, been the acting director, said the signature authority in prior times that we've done this and in the last week. My office is right down. She can come chat with me at any time. We're in the middle of summer, so there's been a lot of things that happen with the construction industry before this time. And it's still kind of a busy season, so we're being quite respectful of that. And the element related to the consulting team, that team, we've pushed some things a little further along, but also an urban designer that works for the agency. We've assigned him to be the overall project management on behalf of the city. So he can do a lot of juggling, organizing, and then use staff professional time for those key times for resources to learn what's really going on in the city. It's probably in some way that I'll tag team with more likely Bob when we go out and visit with the community. So that's my update to that. Second update is, yes, thank you for a couple ways that we showed our appreciation for Meg as her departure. There were two events, one at Anthony's house and one at a local tavern. She has left the building, as they say. Our advertisement was able to be posted before she left. That's a new change with the new personnel director, so we're able to do that. It hasn't been for very long, but we have some applicants. We're also posting our ability in various newsletters and places to get the word out, because we want people to know about it, respond. And then the asterisk I'll add is, remember, at this moment in time, as opposed to any other time in our history, when we're seeking a historic preservationist, talent, ability, background applies, but you do not have to be a city resident. And so for folks that might be in our general geography that has a love of this and have a homestead, that's a little bit different equation than it has been in the past. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, one of Meg's duties and virtues was that she responded to fires. If a seeming historic building caught fire overnight or on the weekend, she would respond as if she were Sparky the fire dog, which I think was a good thing, because we had firsthand knowledge of what was going on with buildings. Will that continue? How does that continue?
Well, second, when you use the word fire, I thought you meant about bureaucratic fires, not the physical environment.
She was as likely to cause those as to observe those, but
Uh,
This is on the record.
Well, some of that makes the newscast. And we'll be diligent about understanding whether there's some that needs our attention after the dust and smoke clears.
I don't think we lost a building inadvertently while Meg was here. I think she was a strong advocate for them.
Oh, she was a strong advocate. I will tell you both. There are some buildings that are a little bit more, there are some buildings that have decayed during all of our times here, so yes. Yeah. Oh, another thing is, sorry, Catherine, I'll take your question, is you, as Meg was doing some check marks and looking at the departure, it became a reminder that that we have a departing member of the board. Was that the right word to use? No, departing from the board.
Just
Member.
Departed.
But we also have some of your terms technically expired within the last week or so. You stay on and after your service, but I think you've all, that applies to, have gotten an email response from the head of putting boards and commissions together to ask you to re-up and reapply.
Does that, do you have to come back in and swear back in or
I expect you'll have to swear again.
not? We did, I didn't do
You get a
that,
certificate.
I did that. a long-
Wednesdays, only on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
And, we standing at this side of the podium, I'll take that oath also.
Yeah.
And we're very respectful because of what we're doing is for the benefit of our city and the people that live here. And we love you guys as volunteers to help make sure we get that right. And all of us raising the right hand and saying that makes it kind of special that we're all in this together and with a strong intention to get it right and use our input. So, thank you, Tiffany. Anything else?
I was just going to volunteer if you
No,
need
hi, yeah.
people to assist with this engagement that you all are gonna do around this code update. I will happily volunteer as a preservation board member that can attend public meetings or whatever if you need it.
Great to hear. Fantastic. Thank you.
I love a neighborhood meeting.
And you and I are smiling for many reasons about that, so yes. Thank you. Anything else? Business you guys need to conduct?
Yeah, so regarding, appeal, the first appeal. Yeah, so, you know, for the record, I'm torn about that because we approved a one-story house that later became a one-story flounder that was completely egregious to the code.
Yeah.
More so than the siding was.
Yes.
And terrible example.
Yeah, and that actually.
I just horrible, and with that,
Tony, I don't remember whether we adjourned or not, if we did not adjourn. You want to change it up? Record?
can I change my vote?
We haven't-
I don't know that I want to change my vote. Because I don't-
He's just bringing attention to the discrepancy.
I believe that,
It was like.
So I wrote A down here, which I thought stood for abstention, but it probably should have stood for anguished.
yes, yeah, seeing a house that completely doesn't comply
At all.
to the code being approved relative to this situation. Is,
Infuriated.
yes,
Yeah, I agree.
and I don't think that we should be necessarily approving projects like, item number one on our agenda, but we also should not be approving projects that completely don't belong to the code.
I agree. If there's a shortage of this and then that, it's just because they were older people, they wanted a one-story house, we had no example, I just.
Yeah, I thoroughly.
We denied them on the first.
Yeah, then it came back and they had the
It
votes.
came
they-
back.
I was part of the
They were
denial.
older when they came back.
Huh?
They were older when they came back.
Yeah.
I don't know, that one stuck with me, that one, I'm sorry, I know this is off kill, but
Yeah.
that was
It is.
infuriating, because there's a lot of discrepancies
But it-
sometimes that happen.
Yeah,
And
that's-
and when you have a reason and versus, I know we have to wrap it up, but this actually really bothers me. When you have discrepancies, with approvals and not approvals and what's in front of you and excuses and not excuses, it gets very convoluted and it doesn't make sense when you have one person that materials out, and then you have another couple, oh, they're cute, they're old, there's one story, and it's okay, we'll approve them, it doesn't make sense.
So which direction would you push us in? Exception,
Us to try to be more,
exceptions for no one?
Painted party.
I don't understand why we make exceptions for some people, like when the Cathedral Basilica, the people, billionaires, and the little old lady that worked for the city forever, in the same meeting, back to back, she literally accidentally gave someone $20,000 to put the wrong windows in, and the Cathedral Basilica came right behind her. And she said financial hardship, people are asking her for her W-2s or whatever, and then the Cathedral Basilica hardship, and we're like, oh, you're approved.
And I was-
That's so crazy.
On that roofing tile issue, I was the only no vote on this school.
No, I was no too, 'cause I think, yeah, I said
remember.
no, 'cause I was really upset about that too. But anyway, my point is, I
I
think
don't
we
think
just
you were
need to
present.
kind of, no,
Were you?
I remember that very clearly. I think we just need to be more, cognizant of, I don't wanna say biases, but we need to make sure we're not giving exceptions in certain cases and not in others, because I've seen that very often. I've been very quiet about it and really hurts me to my soul. That's all I mean.
It is very disturbing.
It
to
is.
me,
He
which
sees the
is
same
why
thing.
I have brought it up, and I have been a commissioner now for 21 years. And I am pretty good at or I'd like to think that I am at my neutrality and following the code. This is just an example, and again, but the way I view this is, no, we probably should not have approved it. But the problem with that is that board is also approving things that clearly don't meet code. This is a little vague. A one-story flounder was not vague at all. They went from a one-story to a one-story flounder. That's not vague. That's 2 stories and 3 stories. And it was required by me when I built my house in a historic neighborhood. I was required to increase the size of my house. Yeah, and so the issue with that, and honestly, I have heard from people in the neighborhood that have voiced concerns about this particular thing. Consistency is important.
Ask you a question.
Sure.
Since I'm transitioning or departing, I will be teaching historic preservation and academic study and researching things like, what does the public think about how commissions make their decisions?
Yeah,
I can start sourcing some data for that research early. The reason there's inconsistency on this board is we're all appointed by an elected official and all appointed to represent different sectors. With one citizen at large, we are allowed to literally break some of the standards, and our consistency depends on who is sat on this board and when people have shown up. Would you, if you could wave a magic wand, rewrite the entire preservation ordinance and change the way this board is constituted, appointed, how it deliberates, or do you think commissioners need to take your job more seriously? Is that what your approach is? And to look at our own implicit bias.
yeah,
that comes into play?
because that's that.
I will point out that we're looking for a structural engineer for about 4 years now.
I think what you just said,
No, I don't think I would change, I definitely would not change, the board. I think, and I understand that we definitely have the opportunity to overturn appeals and use our own judgment on that. My concern with that is, how can I describe this? I can use my judgment in a situation where somebody, if I were a police officer, and somebody's going 5 or 10 miles over the limit, technically speeding. But if they're doing 100 miles over the limit, am I still using that same judgment and letting them off? And so I would liken a 1-story house with all 2 stories to be that instance. I don't see how we do that. Sure, yeah, when you're talking about minor deviations, yeah, but that's one instance that still sticks with me. That was not a minor deviation.
So don't we have, maybe I'm making up this, but don't we have official criteria that we are supposed to be considering when we issue a variance?
True.
And so like someone could bring to us a financial hardship, and that is a criteria we could consider to issue a variance, for example. I can't remember if this is the house you guys are talking about or not, but the fact that it's a unique lot, that it's a weird, the parcel is drawn oddly, or, whatever, that's another kind of criteria we can use. in my opinion, the gentleman tonight did not provide a criteria as to why he should get a variance. To me,
Agreed.
if he had, I would have been open to the idea of that, because that is a reason we can make a decision against the code. But to me, I didn't receive any information about a criteria that would justify going against the code.
So I agree with that. That's why I said that's very vote for
Right.
that, but.
And the SRG wanted us to make him spend even more money.
Well, that, but I dismissed that the moment.
But I think the overall thing is, let's just be more cognizant about consistency, because I have heard so many complaints. And I've seen, you know, a lot of just crazy things all over the board, and I'm like, how is this approved, but that wasn't approved? How is this person a multimillionaire but can't approve, but is asking for this, and this person is struggling, and we're asking her for her tax records? That's,
In
It's crazy.
that particular house that you were in, there wasn't a financial hardship, so that was not the issue.
no,
Yeah, the one-story condo situation, they were using the variance of near lot.
We love.
it was just by the highway, it wasn't a big lot, yeah.
Really narrow lot, if I do recall. I don't think we should re-litigate the one.
No,
I think it's just, I think, yeah,
It's not about litigating.
it's just concern, a few people have concerns about the
consistent
consistency.
and how we are moving forward.
Yes,
And I would just, I wanted to talk, because I'm, again, I'll be gone on the stage from St. Louis, but this process of looking through the consistencies in the local district standards, I know Catherine's volunteered, but maybe all the commissioners need to go to at least one of those meetings and get involved with that process, because I think that could be a place to have some of these discussions.
There is
So-
also like part of the role of our commissioner board here is we have to deal with the ones that aren't black and white, right? If the decision is black and white, it gets handled at the staff level. And so I am definitely a person that likes standards and like consistency, but sometimes we get things that are a little bit more complicated, and that's why they ended up here. And so even though we have, like, for example, the standard of financial hardship, like, what does that mean? There isn't a what does that mean answer. So even that, a standard is so nebulous. And so I think that is part of why this is hard to be consistent.
Well, again, when you describe consistency, you using the analogy that I did, 5 to 10 miles an hour over, yeah, we may not be consistent. 100 miles an hour over, that's not about consistency.
Right, but for example, like the financial hardship one, for example, a person spending $15,000 could make the case of financial hardship. An organization spending $15,000 maybe can't make that claim because it's all relative, right? So that's why it is not a clear-cut line. That's why we.
that, yeah, that was my point, why did we ask
And
this
that's why.
lady for her tax records
Yeah,
in the
that's-
big, in the cathedral, we said, oh, go ahead, financial
So
hardship.
that's.
I agree, but I will also say, like, their ask for the same. She was asking for a variance of something that costs a certain amount, and they were asking for a variance of something that costs exponentially more.
Right.
And so while
Right,
the
that's
amount of money they have is not the same, the amount of money they were asking to spend is not the same. So it is not, all I'm trying to say is that it's not clear cut, and we can't always be consistent because the situation isn't the same.
I don't think
But
it's,
this-
we didn't ask them for financial records, but we asked this lady who was literally living on government
It's all-
assistance
it's
for
all
financial
relative.
records.
So I agree with that. If you say, someone is spending 40% of what they owe,
Right,
whether it be a corporation or an individual, if both are 40% and that's hardship, then that's hardship.
And we don't have that 40% rule.
I asked for it and everyone said it was a slippery slope, I asked for financial standards and I was told many times.
But I think we have to determine that an Airbnb that turns a profit does not have. a-
So I'm going to ask a question. Is what you're just talking about is about something that happened in particular tonight or overall context over time?
Over the last 2 years.
And then with that, Mr. Chairman,
Just Sue Lord.
where are we on the agenda?
Yes, exactly.
We have completed our agenda.
Yeah.
And I believe we actually adjourned.
We did, but I think this was needed discussion.
Okay, so one, a discussion and adjournment and a complicated discussion might be better with cookies.
Great.
No, we don't.
That's good.
I don't think you would.
We are.
Yeah, I'll take, can I get a picture with my fellow commissioners on my last day on the reservation?
As long as you don't give it to Meg.
You can tag me on your Instagram.
How